Alright, what up YouTube? The 690 is passing her 4,000th birthday, so it's time to do another review on the 690. I was going to do a nice beach scene for you today, but there's a high surf advisory and it's a little bit windy out on the beach, and between the wind and the waves crashing, you wouldn't be able to hear anything I said unless I did a voiceover on the computer. So I have enough crappy windy videos. I don't need to make you another one of those. So here's my 4,000 mile review of the KTM 690 Enduro. I'm gonna try and make this video as thorough as I can. I'm gonna go over a little bit about my time with the 690, things I've changed to it, what I do and don't like about it. So this is completely freestyle. I have not written this down at all, and so I'll just kind of hit it. So she's 4,000 miles old now. I do have a full-on dirt bike now. I have a KTM 350 EXC. So the 690's role in my life is going to change a little bit. It's actually going to go back to being a little bit more of a KTM 690 Enduro. So I'm going to primarily use it for long distance trips, long meaning like 150 miles. I go up and do my mountain runs, and I do have to get some dirt roads and some high elevation stuff to get there, so that's where she's going to fall into her role, which was going to be her original role, except for this, she was so capable I tried to start motocrossing her. So everybody knows the KTM 690 is not a motocross bike, but you know, she's a real capable off-road, so we kind of put her through her paces. So there's backlight, so I'm going to go back over to the other side. What do I love about the KTM 690? First off, this thing is super awesome on the road. It handles amazing. It's very supermoto-like. I haven't ridden very many supermotos, honestly. I've only ridden the 520 supermoto back in the day, circa 2002, 2003, maybe 2004. I had a little bit of time on some of those. But anyway, it's a big, basically street bike engine. It's the LC4 engine, and you know, it works really, really good on the street. It's, you know, essentially about 330 pounds with the fuel and oil and all those things in it, and so it handles very, very well on the street. Gets up to speed real nice, and I really enjoy it for that. What's funny is a lot of people don't like the stock seat foam in these things right off the bat. I want to say that I've sat on this thing for many hours, as long as 12 hours in one day, and I have zero issues with the stock seat foam. I think it's really comfortable. I actually have, at this point, my buddy has the seat concept seats on all his bikes. I actually don't like them. If you like the seat concept seats, if you think you need that extra cush, knock yourself out and get one, but don't just go change the seat on the 690 because everybody on the internet says it needs one. That's insane. I absolutely love that seat, and I love it twice as much now that Travis at Moto Seat made me this nice sticky ribbed cover. It's beautiful, stays on, or my butt stays on it, I should say. Okay, so I love the 690 on the street. I also love that the 690 can go a long ways on the pavement, and then when you get to the dirt, while you do have to slow down, you aren't inhibited on basically anywhere that you can go on the 690. Yes, it's a little bit big of a bike to move around in technical stuff. Like I said, you've got to slow down a little bit to go through that technical stuff. I replied in a Facebook, or not a Facebook, a YouTube comment today to a guy that the 690 has taught me some finesse. That's something I very much need in my life. I admittedly have no finesse. It's you know, it's a flaw of mine, and I openly admit it. And so this bike has been really great for me in teaching me finesse. I cannot just shove the 690 into a loamy corner or any motocross type corner without the front end pushing around on me and it trying to boss me around instead of me trying to boss it around. So the 690 has taught me finesse. It can go basically anywhere off-road that your capabilities can take you. Its one pitfall is traction. That comes at a sacrifice with street ability. So as you can see right now, I have a Kenda big block on the back. Some people may like this tire. I find it absolutely worthless off-road. It does great on the street, so I'm compromising right now. I'm riding on this, not really riding right now, I just came out here for the review, but a lot of this is this Rocky style stuff, and that tire is completely fine for that. It's when you start getting on this cinder that's on top of that Rocky stuff where it really starts to slip and slide and things like that, because it just doesn't get to the bottom of it. Anyway, this isn't a tire review, this is a 690 review. So if you can get traction to the 690, it's extremely capable. You can watch me go a lot of places in other videos. I'm not going particularly slow in those videos, and this is a big ass bike to be going that fast in some of that terrain. So it's quite capable. It will go anywhere. You just have to dial back the pace a little bit. As far as the traction issue goes, I find I run heavy duty tubes, ultra heavy duties I should say, in the bike right now. I was gonna put tubeless on it. I ordered tubeless for it, but the tubeless is gonna go into my 350 instead, because this will be a lot of street and just fire road stuff now. And I run off-road. I've been consistently running 8 pounds in the tires with my heavy duty tubes. That made a huge difference in the way that this bike handles off-road. You may need to put a little bit more air in that in the front, maybe 10 or something in the Rocky stuff. The tire rides pretty low in that with the bike's weight, but I find, I don't know, 8 to 10's probably big. Sometimes I've put 6 in the rear and that seemed to hold up pretty good. It just depends on the sidewall of the tire. So lowering the air pressure, huge in keeping the 690 feeling like it does a little bit better off-road. Okay, let's go into things that I've changed on the bike. I kind of gave you what I didn't like about it which is mostly just off-road nitpicks, but they're not really nitpicks because the bike is not designed as, it's not an EXC, it's a 690 Enduro, right? So they're not really gripes, they're just limitations. So things that I've done to help me in those situations are, number one, I've done fork springs in this bike. They are very aggressive. I'm gonna throw that out there right now. They might be a little bit too aggressive for my body weight. I've had to back the clickers way out. That said, if the valving was better in the forks, I think that they're probably an appropriate spring rate. They work really good now. I'm only roughly 150 pounds. I'm a little fat at the moment. For me, it's relative, right? So I had to dial the clickers back all the way about 25 clicks out, and that's actually pretty compliant on, you know, this kind of rocky, bumpy stuff. It's done fairly well. The rear suspension I find pretty good with the stock rates, and basically all I had to do on the rear suspension is I had to turn the high speed adjuster out a full turn. I may come back a quarter turn. I guess the adjuster's on the other side, my bad. I may come back on that another turn. I don't know where in the hell it's at. Anyway, I'm gonna just try and look in the viewfinder so you guys don't throw up from shaking. just because I feel like the high speed might be a little bit soft now, but I raised the sag just a few millimeters, probably to counter my weight gain that I've had, and we'll see if that helps in the next kind of off-road ride. I still have a few more off-road rides to do on this before the barge brings me my EXC. But so the rear suspension I found pretty fine. It just needed some adjusting. Currently I'm like 5 clicks out on the compression, which is very aggressive, and then I think it's like 7 clicks on the rebound, and then 1 full turn softer on the high-speed compression. And then on the front forks, I have 56 rate springs in it. Stock is, oh shit, I can't remember, 52s maybe. Anyway, there are 56s in there now, and I'm very happy with how that made the bike handle for me. I did lose some cornering on the roads. Maybe I just need to set it up a little bit softer for the roads when I do road riding, but I'd rather it work better off-road than on-road. So that's that. Let's see. It's got decent range on the fuel tank. I'm moderately happy with that. I am gonna have to pack some gas. A lot of my rides are so much pavement to get to them that I can get there and ride 15 minutes and then I gotta turn home because they're way out there. So as far as adventuring on it, capacity's probably a little slow, or a little low. Sorry, I'm a little slow. But it's okay. It's okay. It keeps the bike lightweight, it keeps it less bulky, so I like that better. If I need gas, you know, I don't have all that bulk, not necessarily the weight, because you don't have to fill your bike up with gas if you don't want the weight, but I don't have all that bulk in the bike unless I want it, and then I'll just, you know, just throw some gas in my backpack. I'll do a few quick little things that I've done to it real quick. I do have the rally pegs on it. I did carve the teeth off of the shifter. The shifter likes to punch holes, or sorry, the shifter, dumbass. The brake lever, I ground the teeth off the brake lever because the brake lever likes to punch holes in the side case with the teeth that are extra long. I'm not sure what's up with that KTM, but they seem to do that on other bikes. I ground that off on my 350 as well. Let's see, another thing I did was I put this 450 shifter on it. So at the angle that this engine sits in there, I was having a real big problem with the rivet on the underside of the stock shifter hitting the top of my foot. And there's also a square edge on it, and it hits the top of my foot. It's only on this bike. I have that same shifter on my 350 EXE. I had that same shifter on all my other KTMs, and it never hurt my foot until I got the 690. And I attribute that to the lever being in a different position. It's up higher, and I think it's up higher anyway, and it changed the angle on the shifter so that my foot sat on that square edge of the stock shifter. This is the 2017 450 shifter. It's the current shifter on all the bikes. It's the mud-free design. It's basically a smooth little barrel all the way around, and I'm extremely happy with that. I'm gonna link to the videos for all these things that I've done to it. My stock, my exhaust is stock still, and while I do like the quietness of the stock exhaust, now that I have a little bit of time on that 350, I want the bark, and I want a little bit more snap out of the engine. So I'm really craving a pipe right now. Not that I think that this one works really bad. I like how quiet it is. I can ride it off-road and not piss people off, but I want a little more pop out of the bike. And the other drawback to this thing, 2 drawbacks, is that it gets hot as hell. I mean, that thing is freaking smoking hot. It's stainless steel, it's got a catalytic converter in it, it's very heavy, thick metal, and it gets really, really damn hot. So that's another drawback to it. I think the header pipe's probably fine. While I've got the camera pointed at the foot pegs, the ergonomics on this bike are pretty small. Probably fits a lot of people wonderfully, I'm sure. It doesn't fit me super great. I'm contemplating now taking these rally pegs off and getting and eBaying them. Maybe I'll put them up for auction for you guys. eBaying these foot pegs and then putting some lower ones on there. I also have 30mm risers in the cockpit. I still feel slightly cramped on this. I like a real open cockpit, and I'm still just a little bit cramped, and I would like to get my feet lower, even though this thing drags on stuff anyway because it doesn't have a lot of ground clearance. I guess that would be a drawback to it. But the width, they have to, with the width of the seat, they have to bring the bike down a little bit or nobody would be able to touch except for us with long legs, right? So the ergonomics are slightly more cramped than I like. That's just setup. I'm not really bitching about that. That's just setup for me. So we'll do that with the foot pegs. One thing that makes me nervous about the KTM 690 is that the fuel tank is in the back. You can see, hopefully in the camera, this big lava rock gouge right here. That's just tipping it over and smacking into that. You can see the fuel tank is exposed to where your legs go. So I cut this background material and laid it in there so that, especially when I have my knee braces on, it's not just gouging that tank up. You can see on the shrouds where my knee braces actually start wearing through the plastic. Got it all buffed up right now so you can't really see it very well. This side panel has protected that tank a few times. Those are pretty big rock hits. There actually is some chipping right here in the back. That makes me a little bit nervous, but it is a really plastic, heavy-duty plastic tank. I'm sure there's very few failures. If you're gonna have failures, it's in this stuff that I'm riding in, where the rocks are just razor sharp and porous like this. Like, this stuff is really, really damn sharp. And this is the kind of stuff that I crash on. So damage happens. All the used bikes on this island look like absolute horror. Okay, so next, I did open up the airbox a little bit. It did help with the running issues. Down low a little bit. I did put the Kev's fuel controller on it. That definitely helps smooth it up. Another thing that I get why KTM doesn't put them on from the factory, but it does need rim locks if you're going to ride it off-road, especially if you're going to run lower tire pressure. So I'm running dual light locks from Motion Pro in the front with my ultra heavy duty tube, and that requires balancing. These are 1.5 ounce weights, so I have 3 ounces on there. I have an extra rim lock, so it's not hopping on me. I don't know if it's perfect because I don't have a balancer. And on the rear, because the wheel is a 250, I can't get the light locks for it, but I have right here, I have a big Motion Pro aluminum one in there. And then this one I have about at least 3.5 ounces of weight to balance that on the rear, so it doesn't hop. If you're gonna ride it off-road, you gotta have those rim locks in it, in my opinion. At least if you're riding aggressively with low tire pressure, because you're gonna spin those valves and you're gonna rip it off. KTMs don't come with them from the factory. It makes the wheels, you know, out of balance or something if you put rim locks in them, so they probably don't want those big ugly weights, and most people probably don't need them. I took the stock handguards off. They're okay. Got these beefier Cycras for it. I took the stock rabbit ears off. I hated those things, and I got these. These are just cheap Chinese mirrors. They work pretty good. I'm not going to review those here, but the Cycra handguards are okay. I had to do some modifications to that. In my terrain, those are kind of a must. I would have broken many master cylinders and stuff by now if I had not installed those. Let's review the headlight here real quick. The headlight is decent on the high beam. The low beam kind of sucks. It's just a 35 watt halogen, so it's not real great. That's no big surprise. Looking at the forks, like I said, the forks are okay-ish. Now that I've ridden other bikes, I'm not quite as happy with them as I was when I was coming off the KLR 650 and onto this thing. Let's see, go over the power a little bit. Let's turn it on so you can kind of see what goes on here. So it starts up, getting the fuel pump going, does its little, I don't know, registration stuff there. The computer has a nice gear selector there, digital. I actually quite like the computer. The tach is really easy to see. The speedometer, the miles an hour, everything is real easy to see when you're going down the road. I'm quite happy with that. This is a digital thermometer right here. It's got the time. If you hit the mode button, it tells you your miles. We're at 4,063. I got a trip meter 1, got 77 miles on this tank of fuel. Trip meter 2, I just reset them both, and then you're back to the gear selector. To turn off the ABS, ABS is yellow when it's on. To turn it off, you hold the very bottom button, and when it starts blinking, your ABS is off, and it will continue to blink when it's off. The bike, I believe the rev limiter is at about 8,500 RPMs. I'm bouncing off of it quite a bit, but usually when I'm bouncing off of it, I'm bouncing around quite a bit, and so I'm not looking down at it a whole hell of a lot. So I'm pretty sure it's not 8,000. I think it's 8,500. The bike really starts coming on the power at about 4,500 RPMs. That's where it starts to feel more like a dirt bike engine in the dirt versus a street bike engine in the dirt. So the power characteristics to this thing, it doesn't have a lot of pull on the bottom. And that sounds weird because it's a 690, you'd think it would just be all grunt. It's not. On the street, it feels like it has more bottom end than it really does. When you get it onto the dirt, and especially at high altitude where I ride, you feel the lack in the bottom end. So that's part of the reason why I'm wanting a pipe for a little bit more snap. Like, I think that pipe will help open up the bottom end a little bit. I haven't done the research on this. I could be completely stoned on that, but anyway, I think a pipe will help with the snap on the bottom. Of course, gearing probably would too. I'm running, and we'll go into that real quick, I'm running a 16 tooth counter, which you cannot see, I guess, and I do have the stock rear sprocket. Took the chain guide thing off there that is a pain in the ass. But when you get it off-road and you're trying to go around real slippery corners at speed, and especially at altitude where the bike's going to have a lot less horsepower, basically what happens is you roll it on, and I end up kind of banging the clutch, or feeding the clutch, I should say, not banging it. But you know, it's, like I said, that could be corrected a little bit with gearing, things like that, but I want this gearing for the highway. This thing cruises beautifully at 60 miles an hour now. The stock 15 tooth sprocket on the front is okay. I don't like the way it cruises when I'm cruising at like 60 to 65 miles an hour. So the 16 tooth is great for that. I also like how the 16 tooth makes first gear good for like low speed fire roads. It's not going to be good in single track. You're going to have to slip the clutch quite a bit. I don't really mind it, but if you're slipping the clutch all the time, that's obviously not good. So just you know, think about your riding conditions. The fifth gear, or the 15 tooth sprocket, what the problem that I have with it is that I feel like I'm riding in second gear quite a bit, and then I need to shift to third gear on the higher speed stuff, and my perception is that the gap between second and third's a pretty big gap. And so I feel like I'm in between gears a lot. I'm second, third, second, third, second, third, second, third. Where when I'm in the 16 tooth, I can hold second, and I feel like I said, I'm not looking at it when I'm going fast in the dirt, but I feel like I can get about 62 miles an hour out of second gear bouncing off the rev limiter when I'm in the dirt. And then when I shift to third, especially when I'm in altitude, then I get this big gap, and it slightly, I don't want to say it bogs, but it falls off the RPMs about 1,500 and doesn't pull real hard. It just, it's just a little bit too big of a gap. So if I went down to 14, or let's say I went up to 50 tooth on the rear or something, that could probably be remedied. But I want the high speed gearing for the road, and so the 16 tooth works pretty good for me. Like I said, if you're single tracking, you probably go down to the 14 tooth, and if you're just riding 35 miles an hour roads to get there, then that's going to be completely adequate. But I prefer the 16 for my conditions. First gear is pretty usable except for in real slow single track, and I don't do a whole lot of that, so I can just get my clutch action on. Especially if you don't have the Kev's O2 controller on it, you start getting down in the lower RPMs, and if you've ridden like a KLR 650 or something, it doesn't grunt the same down at the bottom. It doesn't just chug tractor. This, you kind of need to be a little bit closer to 3, but the Kev's O2 controller richens that fuel on the bottom a little bit, so it pulls smooth and it isn't quite so chuggy when you're at that low speed or low RPMs. Well, we're at 26 minutes now, so I'm gonna draw this to a close. I'm still really happy with the 690 purchase, especially now that I have another bike in the fleet. It's a really fun bike. If you're not a super serious off-roader, or if you are a super serious off-roader and you have another bike, this is an amazing bike to add into your arsenal, because you can just kind of hop on it and go out for a ride, and if you end up finding some stuff that, you know, looks cool, you can hit it and you can ride it, and then go back home the next weekend and get your hardcore off-road bike and go out there and jam on the stuff. But this will take you there. It's pretty great. No real significant problems with the bike so far. You can see my wheels are getting pretty chewed up from the rocks, and I do lots and lots of tire changes too, so I got a few flat spots in them. But she's ran pretty good on me so far, except for when that little inline fuel filter clogged up. I have a video on that as well. It's hiding underneath this side panel down here. So get yourself one of those inline filters. If it does happen to clog up you on a ride, you can just pop it out until you get home. Just make sure that you get another one back in there, because there's a reason it clogged up, and you don't want all that crap going into your fuel injectors. I'm gonna pop the seat off real quick. So if you don't have a KTM 690, this is what it looks like underneath the seat. There's no storage space under there. This is my registration and off-road permit stuck in behind the battery in a Ziploc bag, laminated. This is my modified airbox. I've got some pre-foam stuffed in there. I just cut the front out of it. What happens is if you cut the whole top off like I did in my original videos, when you're washing it or when you hit water, it leaks down this flat surface and lands on top of the air filter. So I cut it just behind that. It also lessens the intake noise. The intake noise is incredible if there's no top on the airbox. But you can see there's not a lot of room in there. They make fuel tank kits that you can replace this airbox with fuel tank. Rally Raid, or Raid Garage, I'm sorry, makes those. And then the filter is down here. But there's my Kev's O2 controller that I zip tied just to the frame right there. I slid my forks all the way down. If you're inclined to try that, I generally like this. I don't think I do on the 690. I might slide them back. That said, the ergonomics for the street are geared a little bit more for the street, I think. With the limited front suspension travel, I feel like it squats a little bit more in the front and sits like this. So that might help bring the front end up a little bit more. I don't notice it now, but when I first did it, I didn't like it, so I might switch that back to about, I don't know, 3 millimeters or so, sliding them up. Brakes, we'll go over the brakes real quick. Front brake is fantastic. I don't know, 270 millimeter rotor maybe. Don't quote me on that. It works very well. I don't have any problems with the ABS stuff off-road on the front brake. The rear brake, once again, KTM stuff, Brembo, works really great, except for when you have the ABS on off-road. That is just flat out scary. Last, and then I'll let you go, a few things that I would probably do to this bike, or will do to this bike, is potentially get some engine covers. I ride in the rocky terrain. You can see my foot's wearing on it pretty hard. If I had gotten some engine covers for this before, that wouldn't have happened. That happened on the third day that I owned the bike, which is really quite depressing because it's just a big booger on the side of the bike, right? If you ride in big rocks, get a proper skid plate for it. This one is Adventure Spec. It protects the rear brake as well. The stock skid plate really isn't that bad. It's just minimal protection. So if you live in a minimal protection place, then it's perfectly fine. But get yourself some covers. Get yourself a skid plate. I don't know, they don't really need a whole lot. They work pretty good out of the box, especially since they got to meet a lot of requirements for emissions and stuff. It's really a pretty good machine. All right, guys, I know that was pretty long-winded, but I wanted to try and be real thorough. Not necessarily for my current followers, but for people that are finding me through 690 videos. I seem to actually have a decent amount of 690 people following me now. And people that are interested in 690s. This video is a little bit more for them. As my current followers know, I'm a pretty long-winded guy anyway. I'm in sales. That's kind of what we do. Plus I got the gift of gab from my mama. Love you, Mom. So anyway, that's all I've got for you today. I hope this is really helpful to somebody. If you have any questions on the 690, if you're contemplating buying one, there's definitely a lot of stuff that I probably didn't cover in this, so please let me know your questions. I will do my best to answer them to the best of my knowledge. So let me know. I'll try. YouTube's my favorite social media platform at the moment. I don't like the drama and crap on Facebook. I guess that can happen on YouTube too, but I really don't see as much of it. Personally, I just like to watch videos. So anyway, if you're not following me, consider liking and subscribing. I would really appreciate that. I'm trying to get YouTube's approval as a content creator, and so I appreciate that. Thumbs up if you liked it. Hit the notification button if you want to be notified of new videos. If you like 690s and KTM 350 EXE as well, hey, this is probably a good channel to subscribe to. I'm a real dude. My skills are lacking at the moment, but I actually used to be a semi-decent motocross guy. We're working on it. I'm new to the sport. I got a couple of bugs I got to work out, but we're going to bring you some fun stuff in the future as long as I get people watching them. So thanks for following. Hang loose from Hawaii. I hope you enjoy the surf clips at the beginning if I splice those in. And this is what a lava field looks like. Aloha.